Now, with the latest on the papal conclave getting underway in the Vatican to choose a successor to Pope Francis, and his legacy looms large right now as the cardinals convene. Throughout his 12-year pontificate, Pope Francis was a vocal advocate for the poor and underprivileged, even turning a 4-story Vatican-owned building into a homeless shelter. And for Holy Thursday, the Pope often performing the annual ritual of washing and kissing feet with people on the margins of society, such as prisoners, refugees, and the homeless.
I think his biggest achievements were focusing the church on the poor. It always has been, of course, but really using like a laser-like focus to focus on people like refugees and migrants.
Many saw his papacy as the start of a new era for the Catholic Church, marked by greater inclusion and acceptance. On a flight back from Brazil in 2013, the Pope telling reporters, "If a person is gay and seeks God and has goodwill, who am I to judge?" And when this young boy asked the Pope if his just deceased father, an atheist, would go to heaven, the Pope responded, he was a non-believer, but he had all 4 children baptized. He was a good man.
He had a great expression, todos, 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 everyone, 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 which was his idea of the church, just a warm, welcoming place for everybody.
As head of the Catholic Church, Pope Francis made multiple trips to Asia, Africa, and Latin America, including 7 countries never previously visited by a pope, such as South Sudan, Mongolia, and Myanmar. He also strengthened the number of cardinals from historically less represented regions, reinforcing the growing influence of the faithful and clergy from outside the West. And within the ongoing debate of women's roles in the Catholic Church, Pope Francis promoted women to more senior positions, including naming an Italian sister as the first woman ever to head a major Vatican office.
We remember at the beginning, because he was quite elderly even when he was elected, that people didn't expect him to last for more than maybe a couple months or a year. But he lasted a dozen years, and I think really revolutionized the church.
Joining us now is Helen Alvaré, a professor of law and religion at George Mason University, an ABC News consultant, and also a consultant to the Vatican. Dr. Alvaré, good to have you.
Thank you so much.
Yes, good to have you. Let's talk about the Pope's legacy, because you saw in that piece, he appealed to believers, non-believers. He was called the People's Pope, and in some ways that was to his advantage, and right now maybe in some ways to the disadvantage of those who are looking at him, right?
So, he really highlighted, as Father Martin and Father Walk said, sort of the church's quintessential message of God's radical love for every human person, radical invitation. At the same time, there was no doubt that over these past decade or so, there have been divisions in the church. And if you speak to a wide variety of bishops or lay people, you'll hear about those. And they concerned not only substance of church teachings, but sometimes also tone. Sometimes he used words that didn't seem really fatherly to those that he disagreed with, like backwardist or obsessed or rigorous. And sometimes, despite opening debates, he then really took the issues to himself and decided them with himself and a few other people. So there are some concerns that these divisions at this point need to be healed, while obviously preserving what Pope Francis did in terms of expressing the love of God to the world. That has been a part of the church and must remain.
And that's going to be the key, I think, to this vote. Now, we see him as this warm, loving figure, but he was also pretty tough, too. Early, particularly, I think, in his priesthood, he was seen as this figure who could be rigid, right?
So, yeah, if you read the biographies, and there's quite a few, and I've read most of them, I think, at this point, Pope Francis really berated himself for his struggles with a more authoritarian personality, which led to some pretty significant difficulties within his own religious order. And so there was both, right? Aren't we all a complicated mix of a pastoral expression, as the church should, that God is speaking to you and is asking for you to return his love, while at the same time in some of the personal and administrative interactions, and particularly his interactions with some more traditional Catholics, that maybe he was not so fond of them.
Right.
and that something in the church that needs to be dealt with at this time.
Absolutely. So the conclave right now is trying to figure out which direction to go. I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you think they'll continue going in that direction of Pope Francis, or do you think they may actually opt to go back a little bit more in the conservative traditional route?
So I'm going to reject those categories. You won't be surprised. And to say that, frankly, you want all the good stuff. And what you want is the warmness, the global appeal, the ease of manner with the whole world that Pope Francis had, but combined with the understanding that you really can't put a sliver of daylight between the church's teachings on, social justice outside the family and also its teaching on social justice inside the family. That is, its teachings on sex, marriage, and parenting, which end up being a very kind system, especially for children and the poor. You want all of those things together going forward, and you don't want people coming to the church not knowing what she is.
Yes, exactly. Well, Dr. Alvaré, so many are going to be guessing and wondering what Pope Francis would be making of this, of course. Thank you so much for your time today. Good to see you.
Thank you.